One of the most important things on your homestead, if you are trying to grow food for your family in your garden, is compost. These are our two main compost piles, and they have become overrun with this Rhizomatous grass. This stuff is evil. So today I'm going to talk about some of the things we are doing to combat this, but we are also going to build a compost sifter. I need to sift the compost that's here because if any piece of this makes it into my garden, then I have a huge problem. Let's get going. So I want to show you what this Rhizomatous grass looks like first. I can deal with any other weeds, but this one is the most difficult because at each nodule here, it puts down roots and it gets really thick and it continues to vine and vine and vine and vine and keep going everywhere. And you can see even out here on this relatively green tip, it's putting out more roots. These roots will go very, very deep. And if you even break off one of the pieces of roots, that tiny piece will produce a whole another vining plant, and it will completely take over your garden, your compost pile, or whatever. It is nasty stuff. So this is my leaf composting pile, and you can see I've got two issues in here. I've got Virginia creeper, and this is no big deal. This just pulls right out very easily. But this fescue, this Rhizomatous grass, comes in and it roots and it roots and it roots and it takes over the entire thing. And right now it's starting to do that. So it's coming in from the edges, and I tried, as you can see, to prevent it from coming in the bottom by putting a barrier. And this worked okay for a few years, but it could not stop it from coming in from the edges. That's the same thing that has happened over here on my main compost pile, and this is all my kitchen scraps. You can see this big hunk. I'm going to pull it out here for you to see the network. Look at that. That is crazy. Luckily, the soil is soft, and that just pulled right out. However, if I let it go any longer than this, then it's going to completely take over. And under the ground here, you can see here's more of it. This is how it gets in. It feeds its way and winds its way underneath and then starts to poke up in a lot of different places. And if you don't get this out of here, or if you leave the tiniest bit, you are in big trouble. So what I need to do is shovel this out into some sort of screening system, and I'll build that for you in a minute. But I want to show you the only way that I've found to kill off Rhizomatous grass. And that is to starve it of light with some sort of covering. Now we happen to use these black and white UV treated silage tarps from farmplasticsupply.com. But they've also got some pretty good prices over at farmersfriend.com. I'll put the link to both of them in the description below. This has been out here for a month, and this is killing off the grass that's next to our greenhouse because it was starting to overrun our weed barrier fabric. Now remember, weed barrier fabric does not prevent everything. The vining grass goes on top and starts to root through the top of it. So let's look underneath here and see what this has done to those grasses after just 1 month. And as you can see, everything's looking nice and dead under here, which is exactly what I want. And if you kind of pull it back, you can see that it does need some more time because these vines, or these roots of these vines, actually go quite deep into the ground, like right there. So if you leave that there and do not kill this off, then that will resprout pretty quick. So the way to combat that is to pull back the silage tarp and till everything and then cover it back up with the silage tarp. And that is exactly what we did inside of our garden for our tilled beds. And that's where I plant things like sweet potatoes and potatoes, but it did take a few years to actually get all of those grass roots out of there. Now another thing that you can do if you have grasses trying to come into your garden is build a barrier with silage tarps around your garden. We have some friends who are market gardeners up in Oklahoma, and what they do is they take a 3-foot strip of the silage tarp and go around the outside of all of their beds. So that's some strategies that you can use to keep this stuff at bay. But once it's gotten into your garden or into your compost pile, like for us, you've got to get those little roots out of there. You have to build some sort of screening system to get out all of these, or it'll just keep coming back again and again and again. This build is super simple, no reason to overcomplicate it. All you need is some 1/2 inch hardware cloth. galvanized preferable, and you can get it at any one of your local feed stores out in the country, or even on Amazon. They have great deals on there, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. We've got some scrap 2x4s that we had already cut pieces off for the chicken coop. And then we've got some little 1x2 furring strips that you can pick up at Home Depot, and they're pretty cheap. Of course, you're going to need something to cut and measure with, but you also need something to drive your screws, but you're also going to need a drill because this 1x2 will split really easily if you're trying to screw through it. Now, the 1/2-inch hardware cloth that we got is 36 inches wide, and that is a good size in my opinion because this is going to go over the top of a wheelbarrow or a garden cart so you can shake it back and forth and shake your compost out into the cart. So get 36 or even 24-inch wide, that might work better for you. And of course, you will have to modify this project however you need it to best fit you. First things first, I'm going to cut 2 pieces that are 33¼ inches wide. So for us, we are just going to use one 2x4 cut in half, and that'll be 4 feet. But again, modify as you need it. So to put the corners together, we're just going to use one of these corner clamps. I'm simply going to drill a couple of pilot holes through the end and attach everything with some deck screws. Since this is just a compost sifter, there's no reason to get out of control crazy on the design of it. So whenever I'm putting hardware cloth on anything, I find it's easier to just tack it down with a staple gun first and then come back and put some sort of support on it like we're using the furring strips. Make sure you cut in from the edge at least 1/4 inch so that you don't have any wire sticking out that's going to cut you when you're using this thing. I've cut that furring strip that is going to secure the wire permanently a little bit short, and that's because I've got some scrap OSB here that I've cut in triangles. I'm going to put those on 2 of the corners. And the reason for that is I am going to be shaking it a lot to get this compost to go through this hardware cloth. So putting a corner stabilizer like this on just 2 of the corners should be sufficient. Remember with your furring strip to pre-drill because that thing will split easy. And just remember, friends, this is not fine furniture making, so just make it nice and sturdy and secure for sifting your compost. Now the last thing I'm going to add on the short sides is this eye screw. So I'm just going to pre-drill for this too and put this on. And what that's going to give me the ability to do is connect some sort of chain or rope system to this so I can shake it back and forth from an elevated position. So the best method for us to be able to do this is to hang it from our tractor bucket by this chain. We can get it right over our garden cart and just shake it. The best tool I found to get through a compost pile with rhizomatous grass in it is a 10-tine pitchfork. And this allows you to get enough material and for some of the vines to slip through. We're going to load up our sifter with this and hopefully get all of the grasses out of it. So what we've got left on top here is a lot of stuff that obviously hasn't broken down yet, like these avocados and these eggshells and a lot of large leaves. So here, look at this. This is what you're going after. This is what you do not want to get in your garden. And if you're just taking a scoop of compost and throwing it in the garden, that is certainly going to go with it if you're not careful. Oh, and look at this. Apparently my kids were playing in the compost pile. Let's look at what we got underneath. And as you can see, it's a lot of fine, beautiful compost. And now it's really easy to look through here as well and see if any little fragment of that rhizomatous grass has gotten in there. So of course, if you don't have a tractor bucket to hang this from, find a tree branch that is close to where your compost pile is, put your garden cart underneath it, and sift it that way. So there are 2 things we can do with this larger material here. Just dump it back where it was in the compost pile, or we can pick out all these pieces of grasses out at the top and then take that and use it more as like a mulch in the garden. All depends on how much time you have and how big your compost pile is and how badly it's infested with that grass. Well, I've got a lot of compost to sift, so I better get going. If you have any questions or comments, leave them for me in the comments section below. Now go click on this video right here, which shows you how to build the most healing compost to rejuvenate dead soils. Have a beautiful, blessed day. We'll see you next time.